Hello students, the topic of today's session is Palm 2. The competencies which we have to cover are identify and describe small muscles of hand, identify and describe course and branches of important blood vessels and nerves in the hand, identify and describe extensor expansion formation. The learning objectives of this session will be that by the end of this session, all of you must be able to enumerate thenar muscles, hypothenar muscles. You must be able to discuss the site of attachment, nerve supply, and action of thenar muscles, hypothenar muscles, lumbricals, palmar, and dorsal interossei. You must be able to describe superficial and deep palmar arch, and you must be able to describe the course of radial nerve, ulnar nerve, and median nerve in hand. Till now, in hand, you have read about the tendons of long flexors and extensor muscles, which are actually extrinsic muscles, which means that the site of origin is somewhere outside hand. Now, you will read about intrinsic muscles of hand, which are so called because their site of origin and insertion both are in hand. Intrinsic muscles in hand are 20 in number. They are grouped into three groups, and the fourth one is superficial muscle. So, the first group is thenar muscle. Thenar muscles are four in number. They are flexor pollicis brevis, abductor pollicis brevis, opponens pollicis, and adductor pollicis. The second group is hypothenar muscle, which includes three muscles. They are abductor digiti minimi, flexor digiti minimi, and opponens digiti minimi. The third group is lumbrical and interossei. We have four lumbricals, four palmar interossei, and four dorsal interossei. And the fourth group is the superficial muscle, which include only one muscle, which is palmaris brevis muscle. Before seeing the details of each muscle in hand, we need to revise few bones in the hand. So on the screen you have got carpals and metacarpals. This is the lateral side, so this is the first metacarpal and this is the medial side. These are the carpal bones arranged in two rows, proximal and distal row. If this is the lateral side, then this is the first carpal of the proximal row. This is scaphoid. Over the scaphoid, this is called as tubercle of scaphoid. Likewise, the medialmost bone in the proximal row, this is pisiform bone. The medialmost bone in the distal row, this is hamate, and over the hamate, this is called as hook of hamate. The lateralmost bone in the distal row has the bone, first bone is the trapezium, and over the trapezium, this is called as crest of trapezium and sometimes called as tubercle of trapezium. So because now we are going to see the site of attachments of intrinsic muscle, so you need to have the understanding of the location of crest of trapezium, tubercle of scaphoid, pisiform bone, and hook of hamate. Let us first start with the thenar muscles. The first muscle of the thenar group is flexor pollicis brevis. This muscle has two heads, superficial and deep head. Superficial head arises from the distal border of flexor retinaculum and crest of trapezium. So let us see this illustration. This is the lateral side. So this is the first metacarpal. The base of the first metacarpal articulates with the trapezium. So this is trapezium bone and this is crest of trapezium. Over the crest of trapezium here, this is the site of origin of superficial head of flexor pollicis brevis. The deep head of flexor pollicis brevis takes origin from the capitate and trapezoid, and few of the fibers also arise from palmar ligament of the distal row of the carpals. So this is the site of origin of the deep head of flexor pollicis brevis. Coming on the site of insertion of flexor pollicis brevis, it inserts over the radial side of the base of proximal phalanx of thumb. Now to understand this, let us see this illustration. In this illustration, this is the lateral side and this is the medial side. So this becomes the first digit and this becomes the fifth digit. So of this first digit, this is the metacarpal, this is the proximal phalanx and this is the distal phalanx. Now let us talk about the proximal phalanx. This is the head of the proximal phalanx, shaft and base of the proximal phalanx. Now of this base, this is the lateral side and this is the medial side. So the site of insertion of flexor pollicis brevis is on the lateral side of the base of proximal phalanx of first digit, that is thumb. This illustration is to show you how flexor pollicis brevis is placed in the hand. This is the thenar muscles, which you can see, out of which the medial muscle, this is flexor pollicis brevis, and this laterally placed muscle is the abductor pollicis brevis. You need to appreciate the relation of these two muscles. So we may say that the abductor pollicis brevis is located or is placed lateral to the flexor pollicis brevis. Now let us see the illustration on the left side. This is a cadaveric sample. So this medially placed muscle is the flexor pollicis brevis. The action of flexor pollicis brevis is to flex the first digit, that is cause flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint. The special feature of flexor pollicis brevis is that the superficial head of flexor pollicis brevis consists of a sesamoid bone. Now, if asked how to test this muscle, then we asked the subject to perform flexion at first metacarpophalangeal joint against resistance. The next muscle in the group is abductor pollicis brevis. This muscle takes origin primarily from flexor retinaculum, and few of the fibers also take origin from scaphoid and trapezium. So in this illustration, we know that this is first metacarpal, this is trapezium bone, and this is scaphoid bone. So majority number of fibers take origin from flexor retinaculum, and few of the fibers take origin from the tubercle of scaphoid. This is tubercle of scaphoid and this is crest of trapezium. So this is the site of origin of the fibers of abductor pollicis brevis. The site of insertion of abductor pollicis brevis is over the lateral side of the base of proximal phalanx of the thumb along with the fibers of flexor pollicis brevis. So this is the site where abductor pollicis brevis get attached. Few of the fibers of abductor pollicis brevis also merge with the fibers of dorsal digital expansion. This muscle is responsible to abduct the thumb at right angle to the plane of palm and it rotates the thumb medially. Now this illustration is to show you the placement of abductor pollicis brevis. Here, this is abductor pollicis brevis. This abductor pollicis brevis, it is located laterally and flexor pollicis brevis is located medially. Now the same thing we can see in this cadaveric specimen. This laterally placed muscle is abductor pollicis brevis and we know that this medially placed muscle is flexor pollicis brevis. The next muscle in the group is opponens pollicis. This muscle take origin from flexor retinaculum and from the crest of trapezium. So in the illustration here, this is the crest of trapezium and this is the site of origin of opponens pollicis. The site of insertion of opponens pollicis is over the lateral surface of the first metacarpal. This is the first metacarpal and this is the site of insertion of opponens pollicis, which is lateral surface of the first metacarpal bone. This muscle, opponens pollicis, it is responsible to bring about flexion and medial rotation of the first metacarpal bone. Thereby, it helps opposition of the thumb to bring the thumb in contact with the semi-flexed pulp of the other fingers. Now, this illustration is to show you the location of opponens pollicis. In this illustration, flexor pollicis brevis and abductor pollicis brevis has been excised in order to expose the underlying opponens pollicis. This is opponens pollicis. So we can say that opponens pollicis lies in a deeper plane, deeper to flexor pollicis brevis and abductor pollicis brevis. Now in this illustration in the cadaveric specimen, if this is abductor pollicis brevis and the medial muscle is flexor pollicis brevis, then we have separated the two muscles in order to expose the underlying fibers of opponens pollicis. Fourth muscle in the thenar group is adductor pollicis. This muscle consists of two heads, oblique head and transverse head. Oblique head, it arises from the base of second and third metacarpal and adjoining part of capitate bone. So let us see here in the illustration. This is the first metacarpal, this is the second metacarpal, and this is the third metacarpal. These are the heads of metacarpals. This is the shaft and this is the base of second metacarpal and base of third metacarpal. This C shape is the site of origin of adductor pollicis. So we may describe it as the base of second and third metacarpal and adjoining part of the capitate. This is capitate bone. So this represents the site of origin of oblique head of adductor pollicis muscle. The transverse head of adductor pollicis, it takes origin from the shaft of the third metacarpal bone. So this represents the site of origin of transverse head of adductor pollicis muscle. Site of insertion of adductor pollicis is over the medial side or the ulnar side of the base of proximal phalanx of the thumb. So this is the site of insertion of adductor pollicis muscle. This muscle adductor pollicis, it is responsible to bring about adduction of the first digit, that is, it approximates the thumb to the palm. This illustration is to show you the placement of adductor pollicis. This is first digit, this is second digit, and hence this is first web space. So the first web space on the palmar side is occupied by adductor pollicis. So these are the transverse fibers of the transverse head of adductor pollicis muscle. Adductor pollicis is the largest and the most powerful of all the intrinsic muscles of hand. The transverse head of adductor pollicis is deepest of all the thenar muscles. Coming to the nerve supply of thenar muscles, three of the thenar muscles, abductor pollicis brevis, superficial head of flexor pollicis brevis, and opponens pollicis, they get their motor nerve supply from recurrent branch of the median nerve. However, deep head of flexor pollicis brevis and adductor pollicis, these two muscles get their nerve supply from deep branch of ulnar nerve. The next group is hypothenar muscle. The first muscle of this group to start with is abductor digiti minimi. This muscle takes origin from pisiform bone, pisohamate ligament, and from the tendon of flexor carpi ulnaris. The insertion pattern of this muscle is in the form of two slips. Majority number of fibers, they insert over the medial side of the base of proximal phalanx of little finger, that is fifth digit, and few of the fibers, they merge with the dorsal digital expansion of the fifth digit. This illustration on the screen is to show you the placement of abductor digiti minimi. Here, this medially placed muscle is abductor digiti minimi, and this laterally placed muscle will be flexor digiti minimi, about which we will talk next. Now the same thing, let us see on the cadaveric specimen here. This medially placed muscle is abductor digiti minimi. Next muscle in the group is flexor digiti minimi brevis. It takes origin from the hook of Hammett and from the flexor retinaculum. The site of insertion of flexor digiti minimi brevis is over the ulnar side of the base of proximal phalanx of the fifth digit, that is here. Coming to the action of this muscle, it results in flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint of the fifth digit, and while performing flexion, lateral rotation simultaneously occurs. So this muscle is responsible to bring about flexion and lateral rotation at the metacarpophalangeal joint of fifth digit. Now, this illustration shows you the placement of flexor digiti minimi in the hand. This muscle is flexor digiti minimi brevis, the laterally placed muscle in the hypothenar group, and this medially placed muscle is abductor digiti minimi brevis. Now let us see the same thing in the cadaveric specimen. This muscle is flexor digiti minimi brevis, and this medially placed muscle is abductor digiti minimi. Next muscle is opponens digiti minimi. This muscle take origin from the hook of Hammett and flexor retinaculum. So you can see here in the illustration here, it takes origin from the hook of Hammett and flexor retinaculum. The site of insertion of opponens digiti minimi is over the ulnar side of the palmar surface of the shaft of fifth metacarpal bone over here. Opponens digiti is responsible to bring about flexion and lateral rotation of the fifth metacarpal while performing opposition movement. That is, in order to bring about the tip of the thumb in close to the pulp of the fifth digit. Coming to the nerve supply of hypothenar muscles. All the hypothenar muscles, they get their motor nerve supply from the deep branch of ulnar nerve. The next group is interossei. We have two sets of interossei, palmar interossei and dorsal interossei. The similarity between them is that both of them are 4 in number. The difference is palmar interossei are unipinnate muscle, whereas dorsal interossei are bipinnate muscles. Palmar interossei result in adduction of the digits, whereas dorsal interossei, they result in abduction of the digits. Let us first start with the palmar interossei. Remember, they are 4 in number and they are example of unipinnate muscle. The illustration here shows the 4 palmar interossei. They are numbered from lateral to medial side. So this is first metacarpal, which gives attachment to the first palmar interossei. The second palmar interossei is attached to the second metacarpal. The third metacarpal or the third digit is not associated with any palmar interossei. The third palmar interossei, it takes origin from the fourth metacarpal, and fourth palmar interossei, it takes origin from the fifth metacarpal. Now let us see the site of origin of each palmar interossei. The first palmar interossei, it takes origin from the ulnar side of the base of first metacarpal. The second palmar interossei, it takes origin from the ulnar side of the shaft of second metacarpal. The third palmar interossei, it takes origin from the radial side or lateral surface of the or lateral side of the shaft of fourth metacarpal. The fourth palmar interossei, it takes origin from the lateral or the radial side of the shaft of fifth metacarpal bone. Now, the palmar interossei, they partly insert over the base of the proximal phalanx and partly insert over the dorsal digital expansion. Coming to the nerve supply of palmar interossei, all the palmar interossei, they get their nerve supply from deep branch of ulnar nerve. Their action is to bring about adduction of the digit. The axis of this movement pass through the third digit. Some of the fibers of palmar interossei, they insert or they merge into the dorsal digital expansion, and hence along with the adduction, the palmar interossei, they are also responsible to bring about flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint and extension at interphalangeal joint. Let us start with the dorsal interossei. Remember, they are 4 in number and they are example of bipinnate muscle. The illustration here shows the dorsal interossei. The dorsal interossei, they take origin from the adjacent side of the shaft of adjacent metacarpal. Like this is the first dorsal interossei. It takes origin from the medial surface of the shaft of first metacarpal and from the lateral surface of the shaft of second metacarpal. The second dorsal interossei, it takes origin from the medial side of the shaft of second metacarpal and from the lateral side of the shaft of third metacarpal. The third dorsal interossei, it takes origin from the medial side of the shaft of third metacarpal and from the lateral side of the shaft of fourth metacarpal. And the fourth dorsal interossei, it takes origin from the medial side of the shaft of fourth metacarpal and from the lateral side of the shaft of fifth metacarpal bone. Just like palmar interossei, dorsal interossei also insert few of the fibers. They insert over the base of proximal phalanx, and the remaining fiber they merge with the dorsal digital expansion. The dorsal interossei, they get their motor nerve supply from the deep branch of the ulnar nerve. Dorsal interossei, they are responsible to bring about abduction of digits because few of the fibers of dorsal interossei, they merge with the dorsal digital expansion, and hence they are also responsible to bring about flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint and extension at interphalangeal joint. The next muscle in the group is lumbrical. Lumbricals are four in number, out of which the lateral two lumbricals are example of unipinnate muscle and the medial two lumbricals are example of bipinnate muscle. As you can see in the illustration here, these are the lumbricals. This is the first lumbrical. This is the second lumbrical. You can see first and second lumbrical are unipinnate, whereas this is the third lumbrical and this is the fourth lumbrical. You can see third lumbrical being bipinnate and fourth lumbrical also is bipinnate muscle. Now coming to the site of origin of lumbricals, these lumbricals they take origin from the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus muscle. The first and second lumbrical, they are unipinnate and they arise from the lateral side of the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, the tendon which enter into the index finger and the middle finger. However, the third and the fourth lumbrical, which are bipinnate muscle, they arise from the adjacent surface of the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus of the middle, ring and little finger. After taking origin, the tendon of these lumbrical, they pass into the fascial canal which we call as lumbrical canal, and then they cross the metacarpophalangeal joint and then move posteriorly and then finally insert over the dorsal digital expansion of corresponding digits. Coming to the nerve supply of lumbrical, first and the second lumbrical, they are supplied by median nerve, whereas third and the fourth lumbrical, which are bipinnate muscle, they are supplied from deep branch of ulnar nerve. These lumbricals, they act as a link between the flexor muscles and the extensor group of muscles, because they take origin from the tendon of a flexor muscle, which is flexor digitorum profundus, and they insert over the dorsal digital expansion, which is formed by the extensor group of muscles. Coming to the action of lumbrical, they are responsible to bring about extension at interphalangeal joint because of their characteristic site of insertion into the dorsal digital expansion. They are weak flexor of metacarpophalangeal joint. This illustration is to show you how lumbricals look like. These are the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus entering into the digits, and from the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, these narrow earthworm like muscles, so called, these are called as lumbricals. So you can see first and the second lumbrical are unipinnate, whereas third and fourth lumbricals are bipinnate muscle. You have been constantly hearing about dorsal digital expansion. So now let us learn about dorsal digital expansion. To start with it, let us talk about extensor tendon apparatus. Extensor tendon apparatus are of two types. One is dorsal digital expansion and other one is juncture tendineae. In the illustration on your screen, you can see the dorsal aspect of the hand. Here you can see these four tendinous slips. These are the slips of extensor digitorum. So you can see that adjacent slips, they are connected to each other. These interconnections are called as juncture tendineae. So we may say that the tendon of extensor digitorum, they are joined together by oblique interconnections, and these interconnections, they pass from middle finger to index finger and from ring finger to middle finger as well as to the little finger. The presence of these interconnections affect the movement, as in the movement of middle finger will partially bring about movement of index finger and ring finger, or we may say the movement of ring finger partially affects the movement of adjacent two fingers. In case of laceration of the tendon going into the middle finger, so the proximal laceration of the tendon entering into the middle finger will affect the extension of adjacent two digits. Likewise, the laceration of the extensor tendon entering into the ring finger will bring about partial loss of extension of middle finger and little finger. Next is dorsal digital expansion. This dorsal digital expansion, it is also known as fibrous extensor sheath. It is triangular in shape and it extends proximally from the level of head of metacarpal distally till the distal interphalangeal joint. Dorsal digital expansion, which is triangular in shape, the base of this expansion, it is located proximally and the apex is directed distally. The apex of this dorsal digital expansion, it trifurcate into three slip. One is central slip and other two are the lateral slip. These lateral slips, they then diverge and then they reunite in order to form a single slip which get attached to the dorsal side of the base of distal phalanx. All the extensor muscle, the tendon of the extensor muscle, they merge with the dorsal digital expansion along its central axis. Dorsal digital expansion, it forms a hood around the metacarpophalangeal joint, and this hood is a movable hood such that when the metacarpophalangeal joint is flexed, then this hood moves distally, and when the metacarpophalangeal joint is extended, the hood moves proximally. Dorsal digital expansion, the two boundaries of the dorsal digital expansion, they are thickened because of the attachment of lumbricals and interossei. Lumbrical merge with the borders of the triangular dorsal digital expansion from the lateral side at the level of middle of the proximal phalanx, whereas the interossei, they merge with the boundaries of dorsal digital expansion either from the medial side or from the lateral side, and the level at which the interossei merge is near the base of proximal phalanx. The tendons of lumbrical, dorsal interossei and palmar interossei, they are referred to as wing tendons. The tendons of lumbrical and interossei, they have a characteristic relation with the axis of metacarpophalangeal joint and proximal interphalangeal joint. What is that? The tendon of lumbrical and interossei, they cross the metacarpophalangeal joint anteriorly and they cross the proximal interphalangeal joint posteriorly before they merge with the dorsal digital expansion. Because of this characteristic relation, when these muscles contract, they bring about flexion of metacarpophalangeal joint and extension at interphalangeal joints. Now, this is a schematic representation of dorsal digital expansion. Now let us start with arteries of the hand. The arterial blood supply to the structures present in the hand is provided by radial and ulnar artery. These two arteries, they anastomose with each other, firstly at the level of the wrist and secondly in the hand. At the level of the wrist, they form the carpal arch ventrally and dorsally. Ventrally it is called as palmar carpal arch and dorsally it is called as dorsal carpal arch. In the hand, the two arteries anastomose to form superficial and deep palmar arch. They are so named on the basis of their relation with the long flexor tendon. The superficial palmar arch, it is located superficial to the tendon of the long flexor muscles, whereas deep palmar arch, it is located deep to the tendon of long flexor muscles. Superficial palmar arch. It is located superficial to the tendon of long flexor muscles, and it is primarily formed by superficial branch of ulnar artery. It provides arterial blood supply to the medial 3.5 digits. On the other side, deep palmar arch, it is located deep to the tendon of long flexor muscles. It is mainly formed by the deep branch of radial artery, and it is responsible to provide arterial blood supply to the lateral 1.5 digit. Superficial palmar arch. Superficial palmar arch is primarily formed by the superficial branch of the ulnar artery. The ulnar artery at the level of the wrist joint is covered by the skin, fascia, and palmaris brevis muscle. It enters into the palm by passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum. This is flexor retinaculum, and this is ulnar artery. You can see it is entering into the hand by passing superficial to flexor retinaculum. However, it passes deep to the volar carpal ligament. While passing deep to the volar carpal ligament, it traverses a canal which is known as Guyon's canal, where it has got laterally placed pisiform bone, and ulnar nerve is in lateral relation to the ulnar artery. This you can see here. This is volar carpal ligament. This is medially placed ulnar artery and laterally placed ulnar nerve, and this is pisiform bone. So this is Guyon's canal from which ulnar artery is traversing. Before entering into the hand, the ulnar artery gives dorsal cutaneous branch, palmar and dorsal carpal branches, which participate in the formation of carpal arches. Then it enters into the hand, and deep to palmaris brevis muscle, the ulnar artery gives the two terminal branches. One is superficial ulnar branch, whereas other one is deep ulnar branch. The superficial ulnar branch or the superficial ulnar artery will then proceed to form superficial palmar arch, whereas the deep branch, it goes deep to participate in the formation of deep palmar branch. Superficial palmar arch. The superficial palmar arch, it has got convexity directed distally, which lies at the level of distal border of fully extended thumb. It is formed medially by the superficial ulnar artery, and from the lateral side it is contributed most commonly by superficial palmar branch of radial artery, but sometimes it may be contributed by arteria princeps pollicis or arteria radialis indicis or arteria nervi mediana, which is also called as median artery. Coming to the branches of superficial palmar arch. Superficial palmar arch gives three common palmar digital arteries and one palmar digital artery. This palmar digital artery, it runs distally along the medial border of little finger and provides arterial blood supply to this part of the fifth digit. The common palmar digital arteries, they run distally along the second, third and fourth lumbrical, and when they reach the level of metacarpophalangeal joint, that is the interdigital cleft, they divide into its terminal branches, which are called as proper palmar digital branches. These common palmar digital arteries, they are joined by palmar metacarpal arteries, which are the branch of deep palmar arch. Now this illustration is to show you the branches from superficial and deep palmar arch. This is superficial palmar arch. From the superficial palmar arch, this is common palmar digital artery, and this is deep palmar arch, partially seen deep palmar arch, from which palmar metacarpal arteries are arising, and you can see these palmar metacarpal arteries, they are uniting with the common palmar digital artery, and then after the palmar metacarpal arteries have united with the common palmar digital arteries, these common palmar digital artery then bifurcate into its terminal branches. Palmar arch. Deep palmar arch is primarily formed by the deep branch of radial artery from the lateral side, and from the medial side it is contributed by the deep branch of ulnar artery. Radial artery in the lower part of the forearm at the level of distal border of pronator quadratus, it gives a branch, palmar carpal branch, which forms palmar carpal arch. Then it gives a branch named as superficial palmar branch. The superficial palmar branch, as you can see in the illustration here, this is radial artery and this is superficial palmar branch of radial artery. It enters into the palm by passing in between the abductor pollicis brevis and flexor pollicis longus in order to contribute in the formation of superficial palmar arch. After giving superficial palmar branch, the radial artery, it runs obliquely downward and backward deep to the tendon of abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis, and then it enters into the anatomical snuff box. In the anatomical snuff box, it crosses scaphoid and trapezium and it lies lateral to the lateral carpal ligament here. While traversing the anatomical snuff box, this radial artery, it is crossed superficially by cephalic vein and branches of radial nerve which enters into the index finger and thumb. Then it gives a branch known as dorsal carpal branch, which participate in the formation of dorsal carpal arch. After giving this branch, the radial artery enters into the first web space where it gives the first dorsal metacarpal artery, and then after giving this branch, the radial artery passes in between the two heads of first dorsal interossei in order to finally enter into the palm. After entering into the palm, the radial artery gives its first branch, which is princeps pollicis. This princeps pollicis bifurcate into the two terminal branches, which provides arterial blood supply to the first digit, that is thumb. The second branch of the radial artery in the palm is the radialis indicis. This artery runs distally by lying in between the superficially placed transverse head of adductor pollicis and deeply placed first dorsal interossei. In between these two muscles, the radialis indicis artery, it runs distally and then run along the lateral border of the second digit, that is index finger, and provide arterial blood supply to this part of the index finger. Then the deep branch of the radial artery. Thus, it proceeds medially and then it unites with the deep branch of ulnar artery to form deep palmar arch. So, the deep palmar arch, which is formed by the continuation or the terminal part of the radial artery and deep branch of the ulnar artery. It is located at the level of proximal part of the shaft of metacarpals deep to the oblique head of adductor pollicis. Starting with the branches of deep palmar arch, it gives three set of branches. One is palmar metacarpal arteries, which are three in number. Other set is perforating digital arteries, and the third set is recurrent branches. Now let us see the palmar metacarpal arteries in the illustration. This is first palmar metacarpal artery, second palmar metacarpal artery, and third palmar metacarpal arteries. These metacarpal arteries are responsible to provide arterial blood supply to the metacarpals. And after providing blood supply to the metacarpal, these palmar metacarpal arteries terminate by uniting with the common palmar digital arteries of superficial palmar arch. The next set of branches coming from the deep palmar arch are the perforatory digital arteries. These perforating branches, which are also three in number, they unite with the dorsal metacarpal arteries, which comes from the dorsal carpal arch. The third set of branch is the recurrent branch. These recurrent branch, which are the branch of deep palmar arch, they ascend proximally from the deep palmar arch anterior to the carpals to supply the carpal bones and the intercarpal joints. These branches end by anastomosing with the palmar carpal arches. Now this illustration is to show you the communication between different branches. This represents the metacarpal, this is the proximal phalanx, this is the middle phalanx, and this is the distal phalanx. This is the dorsal side and this is the ventral side. On the dorsal side, this is dorsal carpal arch, the branch from which is dorsal metacarpal artery. The first dorsal metacarpal artery is the branch of radial artery, whereas second, third and fourth dorsal metacarpal arteries are the branches of dorsal carpal arch. On the ventral side, we have got two arches. One is deep palmar arch and another one is superficial palmar arch. From the deep palmar arch, this branch which is going towards the dorsal metacarpal artery, this is perforating digital arteries. And next branch from the deep palmar arch which proceeds distally, which provides blood supply to the metacarpal and then unite with the branch of superficial palmar arch. This branch is palmar metacarpal artery. Now, this is superficial palmar arch, which gives a branch called as common palmar digital artery, into which the palmar metacarpal artery from the deep palmar arch opens up, which then further continues distally to provide blood supply to the digit. This branch is common palmar digital artery. Nerves in the hand. In this part, we will learn about the course and branches of ulnar nerve, radial nerve, and median nerve in hand. Ulnar nerve, which is the branch from medial cord of the brachial plexus, it descends in the forearm deep to flexor carpi ulnaris. In this illustration, this muscle is flexor carpi ulnaris, and this nerve is ulnar nerve. Approximately 5 cm proximal to the wrist joint, this ulnar nerve gives a branch called as dorsal palmar branch or simply dorsal branch of the ulnar nerve, which is shown here. This dorsal branch of the ulnar nerve will then wind round the medial border of the forearm in order to reach the dorsal side of the forearm. It then descend down, pierce the deep fascia and then enter the dorsal side of the hand. On the dorsal side of the hand, ulnar nerve divides into two and very often three dorsal digital nerves, which are proper digital nerve and common digital nerve. As you can see in this illustration, this is ulnar nerve and it is dividing into, this is proper digital nerve, which descend distally along the medial border of the little finger and provides cutaneous nerve supply to the skin over the medial side of the little finger or the fifth digit. The second is common digital nerve. This common digital nerve will then proceed and will then divide into dorsal digital nerves. The dorsal digital nerve will then innervate the skin over the adjacent part of the dorsum of the fifth and the fourth digit, and this will provide cutaneous nerve supply to the skin over the dorsal side of the third and fourth digit, that is middle finger and ring finger. Now, whenever this branch is present, which is very often present, then we say that the cutaneous nerve supply to the dorsum of the hand is taken care by ulnar nerve on the medial 2.5 digits. Whereas when this branch is not there or absent, then we say that the cutaneous nerve supply over the medial 1.5 digit is provided by ulnar nerve, and hence the controversy arises. Different book states different in case of cutaneous nerve supply over the dorsum of the hand. I repeat, whenever this branch is present, then the cutaneous nerve supply of the medial 2.5 digits is taken care by ulnar nerve, and whenever this branch is absent, then the cutaneous nerve supply of only medial 1.5 digits is taken care by ulnar nerve. After descending deep to flexor carpi ulnaris, ulnar nerve reaches the wrist joint, where it crosses superficial to flexor retinaculum. Before the ulnar nerve reach the flexor retinaculum, it gives a branch which is called as palmar cutaneous branch. So this palmar cutaneous branch and the trunk of ulnar nerve both pass superficial to the flexor retinaculum. However, the ulnar nerve, it passes deep to a ligament called as volar carpal ligament, and deep to this ligament we have a named canal, which is Guyon's canal. Deep to or inside the Guyon's canal, the ulnar nerve divides into its terminal branches. One is deep branch and other one is superficial branch. The superficial branch of the ulnar nerve, after crossing the Guyon's canal, it gives a motor branch to palmaris brevis muscle, after which it divides into its two terminal branches, which are called as palmar digital nerve, which are two in number. This is the medial one and this is the lateral one. This medial one is called as proper palmar digital nerve, which run distally and will provide cutaneous nerve supply to the medial half of the fifth digit. The second one, the lateral one, it is called as common palmar digital nerve. It runs distally and will then divide into two proper palmar digital nerve, which will provide cutaneous nerve supply to the adjacent part of the fourth and fifth digit. This lateral branch of the superficial branch of the ulnar nerve also gives a communicating branch to the median nerve. Also, apart from the superficial branch, we also have deep branch of the ulnar nerve. This is the deep branch of the ulnar nerve in this illustration. This deep branch, after taking origin or after branching out from the ulnar nerve, it passes in between the laterally lying abductor pollicis brevis and medially lying flexor pollicis brevis muscle. So the deep branch of the ulnar nerve passes in between abductor pollicis brevis and flexor pollicis brevis. Then it pierces the muscle fibers of opponent's pollicis in order to reach the deeper plane. Then this deep branch of the ulnar nerve begin to proceed laterally in the concavity formed by the deep palmar arch. This deep branch of the ulnar nerve, it is responsible to provide motor nerve supply to all the three hypothenar muscle, to all the interossei, that is palmar and dorsal interossei, and third and fourth lumbricals. It also provides motor nerve supply to adductor pollicis and deep head of flexor pollicis brevis. And sometimes it also provides few fibers to first dorsal interossei, but that is very rare. The next nerve in the hand is radial nerve. Radial nerve, as you can see in this illustration, this is the superficial branch of the radial nerve, which descends along the lateral border of the forearm deep to brachioradialis. In the lower part of the forearm, the radial nerve winds round the lateral border of the forearm in order to reach the anatomical snuff box, where it crosses the tendon of abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis, and then divides into its terminal branches, which are called as dorsal digital nerves. As you can see in this illustration, this is the superficial branch of the radial nerve. It is now winding down the lateral border of the forearm, and now it is seen to be crossing the tendon of abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis, and while doing so it divides into its terminal branches, which are dorsal digital nerve, which are approximately 4 to 5 in number. On the dorsum of the hand, radial nerve divides into 4 to 5 dorsal digital nerve. Now let us see the area covered by these dorsal digital nerve. The first dorsal digital nerve, it provides cutaneous nerve supply to the radial side of the thumb. The second dorsal digital nerve provides cutaneous nerve supply to the medial side of the thumb. Please note, the first dorsal digital nerve, along with the cutaneous nerve supply over the lateral side of the thumb, it also provides cutaneous nerve supply on the palmar aspect of the hand over the small area over the thenar eminence. The third dorsal digital nerve provides cutaneous nerve supply to the lateral side of the index finger. Fourth dorsal digital nerve provides cutaneous nerve supply to the adjacent part of the second and third digit. And Fifth, the dorsal digital nerve. It provides cutaneous nerve supply to the adjacent part of third and fourth digit. Area innervated by the radial nerve over the dorsum of the hand in case of first digit extend till the root of the nail. In case of second digit, the area innervated by the radial nerve extend till the middle of the proximal phalanx. And in case of third and fourth digit, the area innervated by the radial nerve extend till the proximal interphalangeal joint. The remaining part of the digits are taken care by the palmar digital nerves of the corresponding nerves, that is median and ulnar nerves. Now let us start with the details of median nerve in the hand. Median nerve descend down in the forearm lateral to the tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, and while descending down it lies in between flexor carpi radialis and palmaris longus. It passes deep to flexor retinaculum, that is within the carpal tunnel. While entering into the carpal tunnel, it gives a cutaneous branch which passes superficial to the flexor retinaculum. In this illustration, you can see that this is median nerve. You can appreciate that median nerve is crossing the wrist joint by passing deep to flexor retinaculum. Before entering into the carpal tunnel, that is deep to flexor retinaculum, this median nerve is giving a branch which is called as palmar cutaneous branch. And this palmar cutaneous branch, it enters into the hand by passing superficial to flexor retinaculum. After entering into the palm, median nerve divides into its two terminal branches, which are medial and lateral division, or can also be called as medial and lateral branches. The lateral division, it then divides into two branches. One is common palmar digital nerve, which will then divide into proper palmar digital nerve and will provide cutaneous nerve supply to the skin over the first digit. The second branch is the proper palmar digital nerve, which will descend along the lateral border of the second digit and will provide cutaneous nerve supply to the lateral half of the second digit. The medial ramus divides into two common palmar digital nerve, each of which will divide into proper palmar digital nerve and will provide cutaneous innervation to the adjacent part of the second and third digit and third and fourth digit. This medial branch of the medial division provides a communicating branch to the ulnar nerve. Now let us learn about certain clinically significant conditions related to hand. First is tenosynovitis of the synovial sheath of the flexor tendon. What do we understand by saying tenosynovitis? Tenosynovitis implies infection involving the tendon or the synovial sheath covering the tendon. And when can this occur? It commonly occurs following the small penetration wound to the hand, or it may occur secondary to the pulp space infection. Now, certain complications may occur in case of neglected cases with tenosynovitis. First is avascular necrosis of the phalanges may occur, as whenever tenosynovitis occurs secondary to the pulp space infection. At that time, the pressure inside the pulp space may increase and may result in decreased blood supply to the phalanges. As a result, the distal part of the distal phalanx may undergo avascular necrosis. The second complication which may occur is whenever tenosynovitis involves the little finger and the thumb, then the infection may spread proximally into the ulnar bursa, and in neglected cases, it may ascend further into the lower part of the forearm where it may involve space of perona. Next is trigger finger. It is a condition in which palpable and sometimes audible snap is heard whenever the patient performs flexion and extension of the affected digit. When can this occur, or why does this occur? In this condition, localized swelling of the affected tendon occur and the fibrous flexor sheath undergo thickening and narrowing of the underlying space. As a result, whenever the person or the subject perform the flexion of the affected digit, then the swollen part, it enters into the narrow passage inside the fibrous flexor sheath and a click is felt. This condition commonly involves the fourth digit, that is the ring finger. Mallet finger. Inability to extend the terminal phalanx actively. However, passive extension may occur. As you can see in this illustration, the person is not able to actively extend the distal interphalangeal joint. This condition arises because of the avulsion of the extensor tendon attached to the distal phalanx, and this occur whenever forcible flexion of distal phalanx is performed in a fully extended finger, and this is commonly seen in cricketers. Ulnar tunnel syndrome. Ulnar nerve, while it traverses the Guyon's canal, which is a fibro-osseous canal approximately 4 centimeter long, located enteromedial to the wrist. This canal, it is roofed by volar carpal ligament, and the floor, it is formed by piso-hamate ligament along with the transverse carpal ligament. Guyon's canal, it is traversed by ulnar nerve, where the ulnar nerve divides into its terminal branches, which are superficial and deep ulnar nerve. Any condition which results in narrowing of this canal may result in compression of ulnar nerve. Ulnar nerve, which is responsible to provide motor nerve supply to the intrinsic muscles of the hand, except the two lumbricals, the first and the second, abductor pollicis brevis, opponens pollicis, and the superficial head of flexor pollicis brevis. All other muscles of the hand, the intrinsic muscles, are innervated by ulnar nerve. And whenever ulnar nerve compression occurs in the Guyon's canal, then partial or complete paralysis of the muscles innervated, the intrinsic muscle innervated by the ulnar nerve occurs. As a result, the condition arises which is known as clawing. Clawing occurs because of the paralysis of the intrinsic muscles innervated by the ulnar nerve, in which they are not able to perform flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint and extension at interphalangeal joint. However, because of the unopposed action of the long flexor and extensor muscles in the hand, the clawing occurs. Apart from the motor loss, the sensory loss also occur in ulnar tunnel syndrome, in which the paresthesia or complete loss of sensation over the little finger and medial half of the ring finger occurs. The skin over the ulnar side of the dorsum of the hand is yet intact because it is innervated by dorsal cutaneous branch of the ulnar nerve. Avascular necrosis of scaphoid. Now, this is a very important, clinically significant condition. Scaphoid is the most commonly fractured carpal bone. The arterial supply to the scaphoid comes from the radial artery. Now, in this illustration, this is the lower end of the radius, this is the scaphoid bone, and this is the trapezium. So, this is the distal side and this is the proximal side. This is the radial artery. The branch of the radial artery which provide arterial blood supply to the scaphoid enters the scaphoid from the distal side and then it progresses proximally. This is waist of scaphoid, which is the narrowest part, and fracture of scaphoid commonly occurs through the waist of the scaphoid. So you can see that the branch of the radial artery which is providing arterial blood to the scaphoid, which is entering into the scaphoid from the distal pole and then proceeding towards the proximal pole by crossing the waist of scaphoid. Any condition which results in fracture of the scaphoid, and the most common site of the fracture in case of scaphoid is the waist, at the level of waist of scaphoid. In this condition, the branches which are providing blood supply to this part, that is proximal part of the scaphoid, will be hampered or will get damaged. As a result, due to the lack of the blood supply to the proximal part of the scaphoid, this part of scaphoid will undergo avascular necrosis. So this is the anatomical basis of the avascular necrosis of proximal part of scaphoid. So In 70 to 80% of the scaphoid branch of the radial artery, it enters the scaphoid through the dorsal ridge. This is the dorsal ridge. Now, we also know that the site of fracture is the waist, and hence whenever fracture occur, this part undergo avascular necrosis. A condition called as Kinbock disease. It implies avascular necrosis of the lunate. The etiology of avascular necrosis of lunate is yet unknown. The next condition is gamekeeper's thumb. In this condition, avulsion injury of the ulnar collateral ligament of the metacarpophalangeal joint of the thumb, that is first digit, occurs, in which the ulnar collateral ligament get detached from the distal site of attachment, which is on the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb. And this occurs because of the forced extension and radial deviation of the metacarpophalangeal joint occurs, and this is commonly seen in case of gamekeepers. The next condition is swan neck deformity, in which hyperextension at the proximal interphalangeal joint occurs along with the flexion at distal interphalangeal joint. This flexion at distal interphalangeal joint occurs due to overactivity of the extensor muscles which act on proximal interphalangeal joint. The next condition is Botnier deformity. In this, flexion at proximal interphalangeal joint occurs and hyperextension at distal interphalangeal joint occur, as you can see in the fifth digit in the illustration on your right. This occurs because of the traumatic avulsion of the central slip of dorsal digital expansion from the site of insertion on the base of middle phalanx. So with this, we end up this session. Thank you.